how to be profitable in 2024.
Marketing has really changed.
That there is a path to a career within our practices.
Change your website geared more towards them.
The multi-generational communication conflicts.
People aren't coming to you because you're an in-network provider. They're coming to you because they want a beautiful smile.
This is truly what's on the mind of orthodontists.
You know, having that high level of service.
This day and age, it's all about differentiating yourself.
So happy to be here.
Hey, Lorraine, great to have you today on the podcast.
Thanks, Davin. So appreciated that you invited me on.
I'm so excited to ask you these questions. And as you know, we've kind of been asking everybody the same questions. And I know that you're going to provide some really great insight into the industry.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah. Well, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right, let's jump right in. So the first question that we're asking everybody is, what is on the mind of every orthodontist that they don't have a solution for?
I would say for me, in the orthodontists that I talk to every single day, all day long, I think every orthodontist is wondering how to get people to put their hands on their door, open it up as a patient, and walk inside. And my feeling is that every orthodontist struggles with that. And there is solutions in place if we have our ears open to what's happening inside our world, right? So understanding for orthodontists who our number one customer is, and I don't say patient, I say customer. And really at the end of the day, it comes to, why would you put your hands on someone's door and walk inside? What needs to go in place for you to give a yes to a product? And I think for orthodontists is that we need to start thinking of, yes, we're orthodontists and we know how to straighten teeth, but really at the end of the day, we have a customer that's looking for a product that straightens our teeth. And that is the orthodontic practice, in my opinion. Does that make sense to you?
Totally, totally. So I love this idea that you threw out there about the difference between a customer and a patient. So do you mind just briefly kind of explaining your thoughts there?
Well, I think the whole business model that for the orthodontic world, right, on the practice side is set up kind of like just the medical industry. And we know that patients have a physical illness, right? That's sort of the mindset of the patient. And the job of the doctor is to care and essentially offer a solution to the illness. And I think that mindset is changing from a consumer perspective. And I think it's sort of books like Outlive with Peter Attia. You know, nowadays, patients are thinking more proactively about their health. And they're making choices not necessarily based on, can that orthodontist straighten my teeth? Because at the end of the day, that's a given if we go see an orthodontist. We just expect that we're going to end up with straight teeth. And right. I think that as a customer, I'm looking for other things. And the given is that I end up with straight teeth.
I love that. And I think that's so important for orthodontists and their practices to understand kind of what the customer is looking for is bigger really than just the straight teeth. I think that's really insightful. So if we're talking about this, they don't really have the solution for, which you've identified as kind of how do we get more people to put their hands on our door knob and turn it and walk in. You know, I'm a big fan of obstacle is the way. And I kind of mention that on this podcast a lot. And so if we're looking at that as a potential obstacle, how can practices, in your opinion, use that obstacle or lean into that?
Absolutely.
The things that you've identified as a way, as part of the solution.
Well, this gets me really excited because you know what I do for a living is I build companies from a little tiny idea. And I think all too often corporate America will say, I have this gadget and I'm going to create all these benefits of why the gadget is so great and you should buy it because. And I think really the most successful companies out there, and certainly the mindset that I go into is, let's understand our number one customer first. Right. So I think first and foremost is that we need to identify that. Now, it may be different from a geography perspective, but only a little bit, right? So let's just say, and certainly from what I do, and I don't think from what Retainers for Life does to transferring it into who's the number one customer over at an orthodontic office, I think it's busy moms. I think it's the busy moms that are out there that are Googling your practice and deciding whether or not you're worth her time, to be honest, right? So I think number one solution is getting to know who is your number one customer and who is she? What are her needs, wants, and desires from not necessarily orthodontic treatment, but the journey to getting to straight teeth? What is it that she's even looking for? Now, I certainly know that now my kids are grown now. I have a 21 and 27-year-old. So certainly when I was looking for an orthodontist back in the day, I worked full time and I felt sort of, well, I'm going to say this was 8-10 years ago, that orthodontists in my mind back in the day kept banking hours, right? Which meant that it was really difficult for me to get to the orthodontist with my kid at specific times. And I would love to see and challenge the orthodontic business model. Should it be banking hours? And I know some orthodontists are doing it, by the way. They're giving out evening hours, they're giving out weekend hours, because really at the end of the day, the busy mom needs that. If I was to go through the top 10 orthodontic websites, right? Just go and Google an orthodontist near me. They all are open, some earlier and some later, but the majority of them keep sort of that 9 to 5 range. And I find that most busy moms find that difficult. They got to take their kid out of school. They got to take time off of work. So really what I would love to just sort of start the conversation moving through the industry is how can we sort of morph our business model to sort of put your number one customer first and then build your new orthodontic model around what her needs, wants, and desires are.
I love what you're saying. Some people are going to listen to this and think, oh my gosh, don't mess with my hours, right?
Yes.
But I think what you're trying to get at is more than just the hours. You're talking about taking an empathetic look at your number one customer's life and what are their struggles? What are their challenges? What are their wants, desires, needs, all those things. And then how do we address that customer with that understanding of who they are and not just, well, I'm going to have my practice and it's going to look like this because this is how I want it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It's 100%. We have a local hairdresser that probably has one of the most successful hair salons in the country. And let me tell you why. Because he understood who his number one customer was going to be. So he now opens 7 days a week. His first appointment is at 7:30 in the morning, and his last appointment is at 8. He's open Saturdays, he's open Sundays. And of course, beyond just walking through the door and getting my hair done, I can do all of these other things. Let's have my nails done. I could even have Botox. I can get lip filler. And so he understood the person that was walking through his store so well. Normally here in the eastern part of the United States, Mondays, there's no hairdressers open. I don't know if that's across the United States. Well, you're a man. You might not know these things. That's okay. That's okay. But that's a world as women that we're very used to the hairdresser not being open on a Monday. And I always thought, if I was a hairdresser, I would be the one opening up on Monday, right? I would be the one that's available. Even if you look at banking hours, I don't think I've been inside a brick and mortar bank in years. I don't have time during the day. They're not open early, they're not open late, and they're open for 3 hours in Pennsylvania on a Saturday morning. And it just doesn't fit with my schedule. Now, of course, they've adopted apps where you can do your deposits that way. But the idea of getting a face-to-face connection with your customers is gone for banking, right? There's no more of that sort of banking relationship. So a lot of times when I'm being brought in to sort of build a company or take a little idea of something that works, now I build a company around it. The number one thing that I say from two sayings is, we're going to build it backwards. So we're going to think about who is my number one customer? What does her world look like? Because I know for us as Retainers for Life, that's busy moms. Who is the number one customer? And how do I build a model around that? That's not easy. I'll go on the record as saying that's not going to happen overnight in the orthodontic industry, but we have to be willing to think beyond that sort of medical practice model, because the mindset of the busy mom, never mind busy dads, right? Never mind, our population as a whole is changing. So we have Outlive, which is proactive medical treatment, taking control, being your own advocate within the medical world. And then, of course, we'll couple that side by side with the Amazon effect. So now we have this whole world changing from a medical mindset of who our customers are. And then we have on top of that, the Amazon effect of what we believe we should get from the companies that we deal with.
I love that. I'm trying to think of the people that we've talked to, and I don't know that anybody has articulated it exactly like that. So I love it. Well, so speaking of building companies, okay, so, you and I have known each other for a couple of years now. And as we're sitting here talking, some people might be asking, like, well, who's Lorraine? And so I would love for you to take a minute and just tell us who you are, kind of where you are in the industry and what you're doing, because I think it's really exciting.
Well, it's just been a long career, let's put it that way. So I think the last time I counted it was 32 years. Back in the olden days, what would that have been, in the early 1990s, I stepped into a sales role over at Dentronics and ended up over at Dentronics. That's that plier manufacturer that manufactures, the sterilizer. I got into the world of distributors. From there, I sort of grew my career. That seemed to be relationships is sort of where my strength set. So once I left Dentronics, I went to a German company called Adenta, who weren't really big here in the States, but man, do they have distributors sort of all over the world. And I love talking to all those orthodontists, because we had a giant engineering department that said, there's a product on the market and it's really great for an impacted tooth, but it's really great, but it has all these disadvantages. And so we would have all these sort of amazing sort of inventor type mindsets in the orthodontists that were using the product that said, if only it was made this way, it would eliminate all of the disadvantages of a product. So that's sort of the world that I set in for, 30 years, which was working with orthodontic inventors and then onboarding distributors for Adenta all over the world. So that was really fun. Let's just put it that way. But then about 10 years ago, I actually read the book. I'm not even sure it was 10 years ago, and I pulled it out. One of my favorite books called The Blue Ocean Strategy.
Love it.
I love this book. And
one of the first books I read.
This actually was a challenge of my boss over at Adenta. She says, I want you to read this book. And I thought, I have time to read a book like a hole in the head. And I started reading it, and it opened up. When you're talking to somebody and they start to get it, and you can sort of see a little light bulb form over their head. And I suddenly had this world that opened up to me. And really the concept of the book was, look at your industry, which you got to remember now, I've been in it like 30 years at this point, and look for where there's a part of the market where no one's swimming. So they talk about the blue ocean is where there's no competition. The red ocean is where everybody was swimming. So having swam in bands, brackets, wires, buccal tubes, ply, all of those worlds, I really, really struggled trying to figure out where in the orthodontic market no one was swimming, and struggled with that for quite a few years. Come up with lots of ideas. What is the future orthodontic practice going to look like? But one day I had someone reach out to me, founder of the company, and she pitched an idea to me, and suddenly I saw a blue ocean in orthodontics. I was like, whoa, wait a second. So that's the power of reading, right? It's like, I lived in the orthodontic world for 30 years, but you read a book and suddenly there was a part that opened up that was never available to me before, because it made me think. And the idea was just, a pitch for Retainers for Life for 3.2 seconds is that the blue ocean is that even after orthodontic treatment is completed and you said goodbye to your patient, that there's still a revenue stream after orthodontics. And I thought, after orthodontics is a blue ocean. right?
Right.
So that led me to working for Amy Jackson, the orthodontist who's the founder of Retainers for Life. And that was, now I think I'm going into year 5. So that's the world
Oh
that
my
I
gosh,
came from.
5 years already.
I know. Tell me about
I
it.
love it.
It's
I love it.
crazy.
Well, and so if somebody listening to this was kind of interested in learning more about Retainers for Life, where would we send them?
What's interesting about this business model is that we have 2 customers.
Right.
That's interesting to build. So we have patient facing, which means that the website is who is our number 1 customer. That is busy moms, right? So the website is built for them. That's myretainersforlife.com. But we also are not a direct to consumer company. We only sit squarely inside the orthodontic office. So doctors are also a number 1 customer for me. So I run those 2 models side by side, and our doctors can go to afterorthorevenue.com.
Afterorthorevenue.com. Gotcha.
Yes.
And we'll put it in the show notes and the links below, right? So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And in you sharing that, I had really forgotten the extent of your expertise in the industry. So, I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff, but I know we've most recently been talking more about the blue ocean stuff. And so, I kind of, the other stuff kind of was, I'm glad to have a reminder about that. All right. So we kind of want to shift gears now towards kind of a bigger industry focus. We've talked about kind of the specific thing that might be kind of getting in the way of the success of an orthodontic practice. But as we look, into the future, which I know maybe you're the one with the magic ball, right? That can see, but where are practices as well as the overall industry vulnerable in your opinion?
And I think it comes back to really understanding your number 1 customer. So let's just even can we go back in time and learn from a mistake that we all made, which was our relapse patients were signing up with Smile Direct, right? Let's call that was our fail. In my opinion, I believe that was our fail. So that was us as an industry not listening to what the patients were saying. What are their needs, wants, and desires? And we know that Smile Direct Club was looking at that and they saw a blue ocean. They saw a blue ocean in not only are patients looking for more affordable treatment, but the majority of those patients had already relapsed. So we, as an industry, made the mistake of not holding the tether and making sure that patients understood that even if they did go home and they didn't wear their retainer, and it's a big conversation, obviously, on what I do every day, but there was a path back. If the unimaginable happened and you didn't wear your retainer and you relapsed, that there was a path back. And if you were to ask me, have we learned from that mistake? I would say partially. We've partially learned from it, but I still believe that if we do not make business model changes, is an example. One thing that pops into my head is the gap, right? So we just talked about your number 1 patient, our number 1 customer. That's a better way of saying it, is busy. We know they're busy. We know a lot of busy moms that are working full time. And the idea that the Gap understood that and then started to put stores next to supermarkets. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I didn't know that. No.
Yes.
And honestly, I haven't been to a Gap in a long time.
And so what mom was heading to the supermarket, but could stop off at Gap Kids or the adult Gap to pick some because it was sitting right next door to it.
Right.
In fact, that was one of the things also that CVS did, is they would spend millions of dollars to move a CVS down the street because it made it more convenient for their number 1 customer. And so, a lot of what I do, and this is one of the things, if you work with us at all, you'll hear me say, let's just dream first. Let's just have a dream. Yeah. Wouldn't it be amazing if we understood our number 1 patient, right? That we understood it's the busy moms of the world. Where do I need to be located? Just as an example, do I need to be right next door like the Gap? Can I be beside the Gap? Can I be beside the supermarket? And here, there's definitely guys that are already doing that. So, but I mean, you're talking about all the malls that are failing, right? Certainly here in the eastern part of the United States, a lot of the malls are just closing down. So let's just dream for a moment. And we dream about even Peter Attia's Outlive and how we're in medical 3.0, we're proactively taking care of ourselves rather than waiting willing to get sick. What if we were just a dream and make one of the levels of the mall into an orthodontist, a dentist, your gynecologist, your oncologist, all of them were on one level of the mall. And every single one of those specialties were a part of each other. And their computer system talked to this computer system that talked to this computer system. So we have to dream. I think we have to be willing to dream. Otherwise, we're always going to try to do it individually, right? And we can make small changes, as in drawing up what does our number one customer look like? What is the avatar? And really making sure that we're paying attention to that and dreaming and building outside of the box beyond our regular traditional model.
I love it. And I think that that's a really good challenge for the orthodontist or practice managers listening is, take a minute to work on the business and dream about because I don't know that a lot, even the practices that we work with, which tend to be some of the more progressive, out of the box thinkers, right? I don't know that they take enough time to really dream about what could be with, or even who their customer is, or what changes could we be making that are so maybe outside of the box of the traditional orthodontic practice, but would really, meet the needs of our consumer. So, I mean, it took us way too long to realize that one of the biggest competitors to our product was apathy. I just, I don't want to change. I've got a great practice. I don't want to have to add something new. And that goes for any product that's new. I mean, I think to some extent, one of your biggest competitors is apathy. So anyway, I love those thoughts. The last question here, I want to transition into same question kind of in terms of, the practice and the overall industry. Where do you see everything positioned for success?
I can't seem to get out of the thought process, to be honest with you. I think if we are going to pay attention, even just go onto Facebook in the morning and you scroll through reels, right?
Right. Yeah.
Go into the rabbit hole, you're going to start hearing different conversations. And I think we are going to allow some outside company, it's not a matter of if, but when, to come in and fill holes that we haven't filled, right? If we're not paying attention to what is the mindset? What are people thinking about? I think that we're going to have to be willing to make a change. I think technology is truly pushing efficiencies inside practices, like truly. Okay. I mean, I just KLO and dental monitoring, Grin. I mean, my gosh, some of like the new ways to be able to do intraoral scans. I think that is going to position us for success. But remember the first thing that I said was customers for them. When they go to your website, the technology and getting there efficiently is not on their radar. It's a given. I'm going to come to you. I'm going to get my teeth straight. So I think that we have to be able to balance what we pay attention to, not get distracted by the shiny stuff. Yes, we want to have a high-tech practice that creates beautiful smiles in a less amount of time. Patients are going to like that a lot. But at the end of the day, if patients don't put your hand on the door, it's not going to matter.
Right. Well, I even see so many practices that invest in, really expensive, shiny technology. We work with a lot of startups and they want these big, shiny things that are extremely expensive that, maybe they don't need right away.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're talking $80,000 to $100,000 in spend that is nice and they definitely can benefit from it. But, maybe right away in a startup practice, that's something that we could defer that expense for a year until we have some patients and maybe some revenue. So, but I love this idea that the technology is really what's driving it. And I also think being smart about it and looking at it from the perspective of the consumer's needs first is really, I think, and that's kind of where I see in these startups that we work with. Sometimes they're taking into account like, well, I really want this cool toy for my practice that isn't really bringing exponential value to the patient experience or the patient, or even to them being able to diagnose certain things. It's not really bringing exponential value there. It's a fun toy to have, but maybe not right away.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that if you, again, understand your customer, you can make those decisions on high spend products. So let's just say, I'll give you the example. I mean, I don't even know how much Gring costs or how much dental monitoring costs. But if you're able to say, I'm able to meet the needs, wants, and desires of my number one customer with this piece of equipment, then market that way. Make sure that the customer understands the benefit of the product. You know, these
Right.
virtual appointments is huge. I'm loving
Oh.
that that's happening, and the benefits to not, you know, oh, you have an 8-week appointment, oh, do a virtual scan. You don't need to come. Do you have any idea how happy mom's going to be that she
Right.
skipped that appointment with little Johnny? So the idea, I really would like to challenge orthodontists to look at their website, look at the 10 websites that are around you, and how do you differ? Because if you don't, then you're cookie cutter. And so
Right.
when I, as mom, goes on to look to see which orthodontist I'm going to go to, they all just look the same. They all straighten teeth. They all say they're trustworthy. They all have great education. But if you put sort of like customer reviews on the very top of your landing page, and there's not just one or two, there's lots of them. You know, similar to like to Amazon. When you go on Amazon, you want to buy yourself a treadmill. I'm looking at treadmills right now. First thing I do is I go to look to see what everybody's saying about it.
Right.
So I think we just have to, if we want to stand out in the sea of Main Street orthodontists, think from the perspective of the number one customer. And I think that will really start to change the conversation and get away from sort of that cookie cutter feeling where mom knows exactly where to go because it gives me virtual treatments and I don't have to come to every appointment if I don't need to. And they're open on Saturdays and Sundays. And, you know,
Right.
a big one that Tracy Martin talks about, and then I promise I'm going to be quiet, is she talks about transparency of pricing. And I want to plant a seed because I know that there's a lot of controversy around sort of dictating your fees, right? There's ways to be able to do that. So by the time I put my hand on your door, I'm pre-qualified. The people putting your hand on your door are coming in because you've already covered the majority of what they need and want from you. And really at the end of the day, the rest is just being personable and sitting down and knowing what you're doing because everything else was answered before they even opened the door.
Right. I always tell people I don't like to use the word never, but most practices don't lose the start because of price, right? They blame it on price. Well, we were too expensive or whatever. They went with someone cheaper, but really the reason that they went with someone else was probably because of some other thing.
Yes.
Right. And price just maybe was the reason that they gave because everybody's within a couple $100, you know, for the most part. So I love that. So the next question, we've only got 2 more questions, but the next question, I think you kind of actually just answered that. And it was really just, hey, we've talked about a lot of stuff. What's the one kind of key takeaway that you would suggest people take into the office like on Monday, right? How do we distill what we've talked about into just one kind of implementation point?
So building out an avatar sounds complicated, doesn't it? It's really not.
I don't think it does, but we've done it a lot.
Yes, right. But this is a world that we live and breathe in. And one of the first things I did when I joined the company is I built an avatar and I built it just in circles. In the middle, there was mom. She was a specific age with a number. And then I lived her world, right? Just live her world. And who is she? Where is she going? Where does she go every day? What are her interests are? You know, she could even be, you know, down to like, she doesn't like her husband to tell her what to do. I mean, just put it onto a piece of paper, right? Like just get it out of here or out. I mean, you've got busy moms in your practice working for you, never mind coming and opening your door, right? Sit down with the group and build it out. And it will mean nothing to you when you're doing it. But by the end of it, if you look at each little point that you made and say, can I put something inside my practice that alleviates that problem for mom, right? So whether it be hours or understanding the payment plan before she even opens the door, those sort of things, and then make that your landing page on your website. And bottom line is be willing to monitor and look for feedback and make complaints a large part of your day, that you're going to have your ear open, and then keep your website and your model as agile as possible. So when somebody says, oh, I thought that word meant X, when really it didn't, And you're able to literally go, I hadn't realized that that's how it was being read. Let me go in and change that word, right down to like words. So that would be my sort of like on Monday, just do it. See how productive it can be. It's really shocking.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So actually, I think that is a really huge thing, that if a practice could take a lunch hour and sit down, bring in lunch and just say, hey, today we're just going to talk through our avatar. And I think it's great. You said like the primary customer for most orthodontic practices in terms of a decision maker is the mom, a busy mom. That's who they work with.
Right.
So ask your team, hey, what would make it easier for you to be a patient here? You know, I love that. All right. So last question, kind of a pop question. We ask this to everybody. Nobody knows what it is going in. Actually, what you've talked about today is really a central part of what I really believe on how companies should approach their customer. And that's, you know, from their customer's perspective, with the customer as the hero and not the doctor or the practice as the hero. And a big part of talking to your customer is the ability to tell story and tell the story and help them see that you understand their story, not telling your story, but helping them understand that you see and understand their story. So in light of story and that idea, every great story has two really crucial things: a really great villain and a really great hero. So who or what is your villain and who or what is your hero?
Oof. Well, when you say villain, I think of direct consumer companies. And, you know, we got to see what that looks like if it goes all the way. I mean, we thank God every day that didn't work out for that company. But as I said, it's just a matter of time before the next round comes in. So I think direct consumer companies, even direct consumer retainer companies, may as well say that out loud. I really believe that they're doing patients an injustice, right? It's, you know, we got to see what that looked like as an orthodontist not being in charge. And I think really, you know, the hero really is the orthodontist, and especially that sort of entrepreneurial type mindset that's not so stuck in square peg, square hole mindset. And we get to meet those guys every day, the guys that are willing to push the corners and the sides of this weird little box that we're in. And really the hero is the ones that are able to sort of take it to the next level. And then if you look at some of the companies out there, you know, even like orthopreneurs that, you know, when you go and you meet, you hear their speakers. We just came back from the cruise, right? And it was weird and unusual and certainly a different way of doing business. But what I really admired was those orthodontists in the industry that are willing to sort of push the sides of the box, take it to another level. And you know what? Sometimes it'll be a little bit of a fail, but hey, you're never going to know. And what did we learn from the fail? Well, we learned that this stuff over here didn't work, but this stuff did, right?
Right.
And we're able to take our industry to the next level.
I love it. I love it. And you can't, I mean, you learn more from failures than you do success, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
We often push our team to look at how often they're coming up with ideas that aren't working out as much as we're pushing them to come up with ideas that do work out. Because in those times where we're really pushing ourselves to, you know, where it doesn't work out, that means that we're actually pushing ourselves. We're not just staying in the safe box. So I love that idea. Well, Lorraine, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you share your thoughts with us today. Thank you for taking your time. I know you're super busy building Retainers for Life and working with a lot of practices all over the country. And just kind of your time is very valuable. So we appreciate you taking a few minutes to share your insights with us.
Well, it was my pleasure. And thanks for listening to my rants.
Oh, no, we loved it. We loved it. Well, thanks again.
Thanks, Davin.